I'm day 4 into my quarantine here in South Korea, and it's a mandatory quarantine. And I've got 6 days left. So today is a Tuesday. I'm gonna get out next Monday at noon. I thought the room looked a little plain, so I got a cat poster. It's pretty epic. So I'm just counting down the clock here. And we found out last Friday that one of my students at the gym was positive with the coronavirus. We're very fortunate that all 10 people at our gym who were in the morning class at the time did test negative, and we're all okay. We're actually going through a third wave. So over this weekend, we had like the highest cases that we've ever had, and it's due to the low vaccination rate here. It is what it is. I think that the pandemic is pretty much over in the US, but here in South Korea, we're still battling it out. And here I am, more than halfway through 2021, and I'm stuck here in my room and I can't leave. So this is my quarantine app here. So twice a day, I have to actually self-diagnose myself. They check my temperature, whether I'm coughing, whether I have a sore throat, whether I'm short of breath. Twice a day, I have to fill this out. But what's more interesting about this app that I know they don't use in the US, but that they use here in South Korea, is for anyone who has come into close contact with someone that is a confirmed case of coronavirus. This app tracks sensitive information such as location, identification information, and I have to leave my GPS on all the time, and I have to leave this app on all the time so that they can track my whereabouts and make sure I don't leave my house. If I were to leave my house, not that I ever would, there would be a really big fine. And of course, it's the irresponsible thing to do, so I'm sitting tight here in my room. Got my water, lots of water, and I've got some snacks which are holding me through. Louis, I don't know what that is. It's like a cookie brownie though. It's pretty good. The quarantine is not very much fun. It's not too bad, but it couldn't have come at a worse time. We just got done with 3 weeks at the brewery. We're actually still constructing the brewery, and this is week 4, and week 4 is the hardest week, and I won't be able to be there to monitor any of the progress of the brewery construction. And so my wife has taken over since last Friday, and it's a little bit stressful for her because she has to get up to speed real quick, and a lot of the things I handed over to her without really being able to explain what it is that she needs to do and what it is she needs to be well versed in. So I'm sure it's a big challenge for her, and I feel really bad for her, but I know she's going to be able to make it through. She's a smart lady, and she's doing better than I would if I was there. And I'm not kidding about that point. Like, half the things that the people are saying to me, sometimes I just don't understand what they're saying. Some people have really, really strong accents, and I have hard enough time understanding Korean as it is. But you combine that with like a really strong accent, and I just kind of pretend and nod my head like I know what I'm talking about. The guy who did our floor, for example, man, you have to hear his voice. See, I'm not the only person who wouldn't be able to understand what he's saying. Or maybe I am. I don't know. My Korean's not exactly that good, but when it comes to heavy dialects, man, I really struggle. So this is how Gia and I have been working, mostly through the phone as she is at the work site.
1,000. How much total, could you measure how much total space is there?
I'm battling with some inner demons here in my room. There's like so much stuff I want to help to get done, but given the circumstances, I'm really just locked into just working on my computer here in the office. And as a result, there's not a whole lot that I can do to help for the brewery construction process. Tonight at 2:30 a.m., we're gonna be receiving the tanks tonight. So we're gonna receive the tanks here at 3 a.m. The tanks are gonna come because our brewery space is in a really busy part of town. So we can't really have like a container truck unloading during the day where there's a lot of traffic coming through. So we'll be unloading the tanks at 3 a.m. when the traffic is basically down to a minimum. And we'll be moving those tanks into the brew house, and hopefully it will just take 2 hours and we won't run into too many problems. Jihei is going to be there and I won't be able to be there, so we recruited 3 members from our gym to help out, and our carpenter, who is also a huge help for us. He's helping us out in areas where he doesn't really need to help us, but he's also going to be helping us, as well as a forklift operator. So between the 6 of them, they're gonna have to be able to figure this stuff out. But we have a huge problem with the tanks. And the problem with the tanks is that we're constrained by the width of our door. So our door is only 1800 millimeters wide. It's a standard double door, and it's about 2.18 meters tall. So the height isn't high enough to let the tanks come in upright, and so we'll have to put the tanks on the side. And to ship them in, some of the tanks are so wide that they'll just barely fit. They're just barely gonna fit through the door. The brewery did give us like a pallet for the 2 tanks that come sideways, but they were expecting us to just kind of ship the regular fermenters upright. So we had to build 2 more wooden pallets so that we can put the tanks down onto these pallets. The tanks obviously can't be on the floor because it'll scratch up the tanks. And then while they're on those pallets, we'll be shifting this forklift into the store, get the tanks in. The brewing floor is actually raised up off the ground, so the forklift can't drive up onto the floor. So before they go up onto the brewery floor, we'll have to upright the tanks like this. Then we'll pass the tank over from a big forklift to a little forklift, like a little handheld forklift, which will be waiting on top of the raised platform. And that's how we're gonna have to shovel the tank off to their locations. So there's a total of 9 tanks coming in 2 full containers. And I really wish I could be there, but it's gonna have to be overseen by my wife, and there's a lot of issues that could arise when we're putting the tanks up and putting the tanks down. I really hope that the forklift drivers are capable of doing the work, because if they mess up, if they were to drop one of the tanks, which would be the worst case scenario, and if that tank were to break, it could take probably about 2 months for the manufacturer to manufacture a new one, and another month for the tank to arrive here. So a total of 3 months that it would take for us to replace that tank. And if it's one of the important tanks of the brew house, it could be that we'd be having trouble brewing for another, at least give or take 3 months, not to mention the extra expense of buying a new tank and shipping it over here. So today has to go smooth. Like, it has to go real smooth, and I'm stuck here in this room like a prison cell, just holding my hands, crossing my fingers, and doing everything I can, sending good energy to my wife, hoping that today will go over well. So I'm really nervous about today. I had trouble sleeping last night, but once it's over... Alright, it is 2:49 a.m. and the crew should be assembled at the store. So I'm gonna give them a call and watch from my room. The first thing I did when I started getting ready, I spilled some coffee on my shirt, but it's all good. Gotta drink a little bit of coffee, wake up a little bit, and channel positive energy towards them for good results.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
It just came.
Oh geez, is everybody there?
No, Sai's not here.
Site's not there?
I
think it'll be okay.
Oh my god. What?
애들 지금 저기 우리 삼촌.
So this is our first of 2 40-foot container trucks that we would have to move into our brewing space today. This first truck only contains 1 of the actual brew tanks. So in total we have 9 tanks, along with all sorts of other pipes and other miscellaneous products that are going to be shipped in with the first truck. So early on, trying to move the first tank, we reached our very first problem. The tank was actually bolted down to the ground using nails, and at the time, I think no one realized that it was bolted down. The forklift operator was a little bit worried that it might be a weight problem, so we tried to use force to try to budge the tank using the forklift. What we soon found out was that the tank was bolted down by a specific nail that couldn't just be wrenched open using an ordinary wrench. This is our first problem. They sent these tanks in the containers, but what they failed to tell us is that they bolted it down with special nails. So you can see the head there. It took quite a long time to unscrew the nail, because it requires a special tool to take the nail out. Luckily, we had a carpenter here with us. If he wasn't there, we would have had to send these tanks back. But he didn't have the perfect tool. He just had a tool that kind of, sort of works. So the nail The first nail that he took out took a little bit over 10 minutes. And upon thoroughly examining the tank, we realized that this tank was bolted down by a total of 16 nails. So this here was our first problem.
You know, we only took out like 2 nails.
That's fine, he's just gonna have to wait.
Oh,
He's just gonna have to wait.
yeah. I mean, he's here from like 2:40, so the hourly rate is still going.
That's fine, there's nothing we can do.
They fucking nailed the side of the rods too. I think there's like 50 more.
Can we not get more wrenches in there? Can we get more people in there?
Yeah, just like 3 people working, but it's just really hard to work. It doesn't come out very well, the
Yeah.
wrench.
Do you guys need more wrenches?
아니, 렌치는 다 있어, 내 생각에는. 어차피 3명 목소리 판단님 하를. 일단 끊을게.
Okay. Just sitting here. Coronavirus! Just trying to get the first tank out took us about 1 hour. But with enough persistence, we were able to get the tank loose, and so started the unloading of the tanks. We had 9 total tanks that we would have to remove in 2 different containers. And it was a slow and grueling process. Yeah, the streets are totally empty. Seeing as how it's 3 a.m., there's not a whole lot of people awake. Luckily, the first tank only had 1 tank and just extra supplies like the kegs and other small materials that we could easily ship out. The second truck is where we spent most of our time unloading. Just unloading the first truck took 1.5 hours, but we were very happy that we were able to get it done. Let me just read you some of these messages. Forklift guy struggling, but got the nails out, but we can't unload. Too heavy, says the carpenter. To which I replied, she said a 3-ton forklift would work. To which Jay replied, we finally got it, and now I have some photos to show you guys. That is our tank. We're gonna be making beer with that tank. That is still the same tank. That is a very big tank. And last photo, the tank in all its glory. Come on, baby. We can make this happen. By we, I mean everyone there who's working very hard to make this a success. They can make this happen. I'm just chilling here. So our strategy at first is to just unload all of the trucks onto the street. And then after all of the trucks are unloaded, we would begin working on moving the cargo into the store.
First of the 2 trucks on his way out, and lorry number 2 has arrived. Why?
The second truck took a lot of manual labor to unload the tanks. It was very difficult to forklift the heat exchanger off because it wouldn't stand very well when it was lifted on the forklift. So we engaged in some dangerous maneuvers to be able to balance the heat exchanger onto the forklift. Junyeon had apparently had a lot of previous experience using a hand pallet, which we were surprised to find out.
Stop!
His random skill really helped out for us that day when we were unloading the trucks.
That looks strong.
We were running way behind schedule, and so we had to move the truck so we could stop blocking the road. It was almost 6 a.m. and we hadn't even started moving the materials into the brew house. And they're still unloading the tanks. It's 5 a.m. now. Sun's starting to rise. Luckily there's still no cars, but the cars were becoming more and more plentiful, so we had to move fast before the morning traffic kicked in. The sun is now up and cars are starting to come out. A little past 6 a.m.
The final piece.
By the time the last tank was unloaded, it was about 7 a.m., so the sun had already risen. And now we could begin the process of moving the tanks into the brew house. It was a very tight space to get these tanks through the door. Once the tanks were in, we had to tip them upright and then set them up onto the elevated brew space. There are 2 holes at the top of the tank that you can use to raise the tank, but when you do, you're supposed to also use the legs to help support the weight of the tank. The manufacturer was really clear about this. However, since I wasn't there, they just lifted the tanks using the holes at the top of the tank, which is apparently a very dangerous thing to do because the tank could potentially fall or get damaged. The first tank that got moved in was one of the bigger ones, but so it goes. Tank number 1 was now in the brew house.
Yeah. Are you going to CrossFit today?
No.
When it says flat bottom, does that mean that flat bottom? I need to figure out if that's a hot liquor tank or a cold water tank, but there's no reference photo for the cold liquor tank in the brochure.
Listen, just measure the length of the tank. The hot liquor tank is 3.3 meters tall. The cold liquor tank is 2.5 meters.
2.3, 2.5, okay.
Yeah, that should immediately identify which one's which.
This is the biggest piece, I think. It was a mission to get through the door.
This is the most difficult one.
The most difficult one, right?
Yes.
And the morning traffic was starting to kick in, so we needed some traffic control. This hot liquor tank was the biggest tank that we had in the whole shipment. It was so big that it was shipped on its side. This guy was a hard one to hoist up. By 8 a.m. we were down to the last 3 tanks. We're almost at the finish line.
Looking like this now. What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces in.
Everyone was starting to get really tired, and for sure, we had no idea it would take this long. It ended up taking 7 hours to move all the tanks. In our estimates, we were thinking that maybe it would take about 3 hours, so the workload was a lot longer than we had expected. And what would it be without one more problem?
Stop.
As we were loading the last 3 tanks, the pallet finally broke. So for the last 2 tanks, we had to find a way to lift the tank without a pallet. Nonetheless, we were able to finish the moving of the tanks, and thus concludes Tank Day. By the time we were done, it was 9:45 a.m., 7 hours after we had started. And so everyone went back home to take a nice nap.